We have been shown yet more hero skills, and this time they are even more broken. There are some insane combinations we can do with Stelle and Pygmalien specifically, but there are also some very interesting Vanessa hero skills in here. I'm not going to waste your time. Let's just jump straight into them. So, for those of you that have missed the last week or the last video, skills now appear in 3 different tiers, and this has been confirmed by the devs now. You have free skills, which would likely appear earlier on in the game. You just go to a merchant, go to an event, pick those up for free. Then you have 4 gold skills, which cost 4 gold, take a little bit longer. And then you have 8 gold skills, which will be appearing later on in the game and costing you more of your money. Our first free skill this week is for Stelle. We've got 2 skills. We've got a bunch of Stelle skills, a bunch of Vanessa skills, and then a fun pig skill right at the very end. So armored vehicles is our first Stelle skill. Say that 10 times. On the free tier, when you use a vehicle, gain 10 shield. This is just a fairly nice little upgrade for a Vanessa archetype. Vanessa has a bunch of vehicles, and from what I'm aware, the vehicles are quite slow moving and don't necessarily interact with shielding, although there may be a few examples that I'm able to put up that do already give you shielding, which this would compound on top of. But even if it doesn't, it is just going to be nice to keep you alive as Stelle. Stelle does require a little bit of time to get going and to reach the tempo that she wants to get at, because you have to balance your altitude. So if you have a build that needs to survive, let's say, until 10 seconds for your second altitude tick to come in, or whatever you're working on with Stelle, something like armored vehicles, if you're already deep into the vehicles archetype, will definitely help with that. 10 shield isn't anything to really write home about, but this is a free skill after all. Moving on, we have the Flame Barrier, also for Stelle, also free tier. This hero skill grants you 5 shield whenever you apply a burn. So we've got a couple of free tier Stelle shielding skills here. That one's even harder to say. And this one is for burn, which there aren't many vehicles that apply burn. I can think of one off the top of my head. But Stelle does have access to a bunch of burn. Not as much as Vanessa, but probably about on par with Jules, if not a little bit lower. But she definitely has solid access to burn. And judging by the cooldown of this, I would say the devs expect us to be able to apply burn twice as often as they expect us to be able to use vehicles. Which suggests that there are quite a few burn items that we haven't seen for Stelle. Because why would this be half the strength of the previous skill? Very obvious numbers like that mean that we can extrapolate even further outside of skills, which is interesting. I know this is a skills segment, but they are hot off the press, which means they are balanced to the current iteration of the game, and we can very easily compare these 2 items together, or these 2 skills together. That being said, burning, again, like with Stelle's altitude builds, will take time to ramp up. Burning does damage per stack applied, so you want to be able to ramp that up to really get your damage going. You're going to want some shielding to help you live through those first couple of cycles of your items, because that does seem to be where the game is going currently. Is that your whole item library or your whole board will have to go through a couple of cycles before the game ends. We're not going to have those super short games, and we're also less likely to have the really long games now. They're trying to find this neat point. Nice little middle point where you'll be able to cycle through your build a couple of times during a match. Alright, moving on to Vanessa. We have big guns. When you use a large item, gain 1 strength. I can only assume that's permanent. That's not permanent, rather. It would say if it was permanent, but that's still pretty decent. So when you use a large item, gain 1 strength. Large items typically have had longer cooldowns, but there are some that have been a little bit shorter. Off the top of my head, Luxury Tents, for example, that's not a really long cooldown. It was just barely in the double digits, if I remember rightly. Lion's Cane, also a little bit shorter. I'm sure there are smaller ones. Those are just ones coming off the top of my head. I think Skyscraper is like a 6-second. This is me trying to remember. This is a poor idea. My memory of these types of things is terrible. But yeah, in general, Vanessa is going to be wanting strength, because she's going to have, typically, in a regular Vanessa build, will have a lot of items. Now, there is one counterintuitive part to this, where in the early game, so you already have some locked slots. So slots are a premium for you at this point. If you have a large item, that is taking up at least half of your current spaces, which means you could have at most 3 other items benefiting from this strength. Early on, especially, but even late game, your strength will be more useful the more often things are firing. That might sound obvious, because it kind of is, but what's not obvious, which is maybe a little bit underneath that layer, is that the easiest way to have more things fire is to have more things. 1 large item is taking the place of 3 small items. So, unfortunately, you are going to have at least 1 large item to give you strength for this. Maybe you have 2, which means you have even fewer items benefiting from that strength. This I can see working extremely well if you have low cooldown large items. A low cooldown large item that does damage, by the way. So a low cooldown large weapon for Vanessa will be the perfect combination with big guns. When we start to see those, that's when this skill is going to be exceptional. Outside of that, I think it's okay, right? It's a little bit of strength if you have a large item for free, but it's not perfect. Fish our friends! I loved seeing this one. At the start of each day, get a piranha. We saw a piranha build way back when. I will leave a link to that at the end of the video. Reynad's piranha build was hilarious. Piranhas are a small, I think, aquatic weapon, or maybe they're just a small aquatic item that just regularly deal damage. You must be able to find a way of buffing them. Something like a dam, for instance, might work. But yeah, getting a piranha at the start of each day, it's not incredible, but because it is such a low cost skill, it's a 0 cost skill, you are picking this up in the early game. So you're in day like 1, 2, or 3. If you're going for a longer run, then you can get up to 7 piranhas. And this is, of course, if they haven't changed what piranha does. Piranha may have completely changed, but if it hasn't, then it's just a really good solid body for an aquatic build. It's just a fast-firing aquatic weapon, effectively. So yeah, really good if you're trying to aim into an aquatic build. Maybe you've already picked up 1 aquatic item. Maybe you just want to go for an aquatic item, or an aquatic build. Maybe you're looking to build around dam. Then Fish Our Friends is a perfectly decent early pickup. Right, now we get to move into some 4-drops. Now these are going to be your mid-game sort of your mid-game skills rather, and these are going to be what separate the boys from the men, the ladies from the girls, if that's also used as a saying or whatever. This is going to be the difference between ending your run early and continuing your run and having a chance at a 10-day run. So we're going to start with Stelle, then go into Vanessa again. With Stelle, we have Eject. The first time you drop below 10% maximum HP, gain 50 health, remove 10 burn, and remove 10 poison from yourself. This is your oh shit button. I mean, that's what it is, eject, right? This is if you are running a Stelle, or this is good for you if you are running a Stelle build that is going to take a while to get online. If you're running one of those altitude builds that have a long build up, if you're running one of those burn builds that need to get stacks going, eject is a really nice hero skill for you, because you are going to drop below 10% max HP probably at some point, and 50 health is either 50% of what you start with, or a third of what you start with. We're not sure if it's 100 or 150 that you start with anymore. It's been a long time since we've seen any updates. But this will save you from most things. There are some things, like Space Laser for example, that will just one-shot you. That's unfortunate. But assumedly, this doesn't trigger if you drop straight to 0. But if you do drop underneath 10%, then it will. Which, now that I mention it, under 10% max HP is a very specific number. If the enemy is ramping at all, there is a chance that they drop you from 11% to 0%. And that you don't hit this threshold. I would almost prefer this if this was higher, if this was 20 or 30%. But obviously that would make it better. Maybe at 20-30% and it's only 40 health, or 25 health even. I'm not sure, but I feel like eject is a bit of a trap. I could be completely wrong. In a meta where burn or poison is extremely prevalent, then of course eject is going to be good, because burn and poison are just going to be ticking you down, and you're almost definitely going to go into that 10% max HP threshold, because it's much harder to do big swings with burn and poison. But outside of burn and poison metas, I don't necessarily see eject being a must-buy for me. But we could be entirely wrong. There are a lot of factors we still don't know. Back over to Vanessa for some 4-drops. We have Frostbite. When your opponent uses a weapon, apply 1 second of freeze to it. We now have Freeze Mage Vanessa, apparently. These sort of counteractive measures, like Frostbite, like eject even, these are going to rely on you picking the correct enemy to face. So you have a hero skill that says, when your opponent uses a weapon, freeze it. You want to go against opponents that have lots of weapons, which means at the end of the day, when you're choosing your opponent, check out their skills if that's still allowed. Make sure that they have something like the first one we saw, Big Guns for Vanessa, that's giving her strength. That means that she's going to be using weapons regularly because she wants to make use of that strength. So if your opponent is using a strength build, then Frostbite is a really nice counter to that, because they're going to be using weapons regularly, which means you're going to be freezing them regularly, which means you'll be able to get your build off and get to your win condition, whatever that is. So items like this, or hero skills like this, and for whatever it's worth, items like this if we see any, but these sort of counteractive effects we've only really seen on hero skills so far. These are going to rely heavily on you choosing the right opponent. On the plus side, you get to be a thorn in someone's side if they ever pick you as a ghost. Next up, and speaking of that very same thing, we have Stop That.
Stop right there, criminal scum!
For Vanessa, a 4-drop. When your opponent heals, daze them for 2 seconds. It fits into the exact same category as Frostbite. Now you want to be looking at someone who has hero skills that say things like, when you heal, gain a strength, or when you do something, heal for something. Judging your opponent's skills is going to be a key skill set in the Bazaar, if that is still the case. And what I mean by this, by the way, is at the end of the day, the last time we saw the game, you would get a choice between 3 opponents. An opponent who is at your skill level, an opponent who is higher than your skill level, or an opponent who is lower than your skill level. Their classes would be random or whatever the game pulled out for you, but you wouldn't get to see their build, but you would get to see their hero skills. So, if you go up against an opponent and you hover over their skills and you see that some of them have, I don't know, immunity to daze every 3 seconds or some dumb shit, I don't know, then you definitely don't go against them to stop that. But if you see the higher skill opponent actually is running a heal build based on their skills, then you can go against them with Stop That, and you should get some effectiveness out of this. The caveat to this, and this is getting really deep before we know anything at all, but the caveat to this is, there is a world in which to be a thorn in someone's side, or, okay, there are 2 ways. To be a thorn in someone's side, you could pick skills that don't necessarily benefit your build. You could pick skills that are the counter to what you are, right? So, or that you counter the counter of. So in this case, when your opponent heals, gain 2 seconds of daze, no one with a heal build will go against this when they see it. So if you're running a build that is very weak to heal builds, for some reason, then you can pick up Stop That, and then no one's going to pick a heal build into you. And your ghost will get some kills that way. But that's a very unlikely scenario, because you're supposed to play for your own run. What is more likely is that your low skill opponent potentially just picked the wrong fucking skills. Like, if I queue into a game and I see someone, my low skill opponent has picked Stop That, and I'm running a heal build, I'm going to avoid them, but there's a chance they just picked Stop That because they liked the picture of the hand. I don't know. There are lots of small brain, smooth brain, and big brain things to think of with hero skills. I think it's exciting. I think it's a really interesting addition. It's that bit of the brain that gives you that rush when you are mean in another card game, right? Whether it's Hearthstone and you successfully completely freeze lock your enemy, or if it's magic and you line up a beautiful counterplay, that sort of anti-fun gameplay triggers something in your mind that's like, ha, I outwitted someone. I did a smart thing, and they did a dumb thing. I'm better. I'm good. Ha ha, happy days. That should still get, you should still get a small dose of that, at least, from seeing the enemy skills and picking the right person to play against. Or seeing that your ghost kicked someone's ass because you misled them. Anyway, let's move into our 8 gold. These are our big boy late game hero skills. And the first one we have is for Stelle. Because that is Stelle, I think, in that picture. Who knows? Thrill of the Flight. Thrill of the Flight. I can barely say that word, apparently. Your strength is increased by your altitude. So whenever you gain altitude, you're gaining strength. This one is nuts. Now, I have seen a fair bit of sleuth work from our friends in our Bazaar Discord. If you want to join that, there should be links down below. Suggesting that we haven't seen Stelle for a while, and some of the Stelle items we have seen recently have been lower on the strength scale a little bit, maybe. So there is a chance that strength gain isn't going to be as massive as it once was. And looking at some of these hero skills, that's kind of the case. That's kind of been the theme. However, or altitude as well, isn't going to be as much of a gain. We're only getting sort of like 2 here, 5 there. But that's still like 7 strength, which if you have a fast firing weapon is insane. So even if altitude gain has been nerfed slightly for Stelle, or at least rebalanced so you need less of it, which I think is a good thing, by the way. Much easier to balance a small number in your head. This is still going to absolutely pop off in some builds. Builds that fire quickly, or builds that have lots of small items that all work together to increase altitude or whatever. It also doesn't say anything about your strength being decreased by your lack of altitude, but I assume that it just mirrors it. But if it's the case that whenever you gain altitude, you gain strength for that fight, and it doesn't go down, so the next time you gain altitude, you gain that strength again, that would be very insane. That would be incredibly overpowered. But even if it is just that your strength equals your altitude at all times during the fight, that's still very, very strong for the majority of Stelle's altitude builds, because they do work around gaining altitude and then dealing that as damage. This would effectively double it. And last but not least, we have our only Pygmalien skill of the entire week, and it is an 8 cost one, and it is Swole. You get Swole. You have +8 strength. This puts the previous skill, Stelle's Thrill of the Flight, into a little bit of perspective. And I love these flat number skills just for our own benefit of being able to like map out what the devs think are good numbers. Your late game skill for 8 gold is going to give you +8 strength. So that's like the maximum they want to give you for a luxury thing. This is a luxury skill and is giving you 8 strength, which means if we have anything that's giving you like 5 to 8 strength, that is a lot of strength. If anything's giving you more than 8 strength, that is a busted amount of strength. So Thrill of the Flight is looking better and better, having looked at Swole. Swole itself, +8 strength, we know that Pygmalien makes great use of strength. You have Flail, you have Brass Knuckles, you have Yo-Yo that just fires quickly. Brass Knuckles triples the use of strength, and Flail hits 3 times, so uses strength 3 times. Pygmalien, very, very good with strength, has some great strength builds. Swole is just going to be a lovely little addition at the end of that. Although you're very much going to be giving away the game plan to anyone that sees your ghost. So, to get a little taster of what some of these might be able to do, you remember earlier in the video we mentioned the Piranha build that Reynad did? Well, now we're going to be getting 1 Piranha a day. You should probably go check out what they can do, or at least what they used to be able to do. It's absolutely insane. So if there are anything like they used to be, that's definitely a hero skill to look out for.